Hello?
David Shayler.
Hello, mate. You alright?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, yeah. I'm in a house now, so I'm near signals and stuff.
Nice. We're getting the Christ consciousness loud and clear.
Yeah, we are indeed, yes. That was a pretty bad signal last time I was chatting to you. It was quite tricky.
So,
yes.
where do we begin?
What do you mean with what?
Begin at the end or end at the beginning?
With what?
With an interview with Christ incarnate, you know.
How do we do that? We basically, well, I don't know. We've got to tell the story. I think we've got to tell the latest bit and then tell the past bit afterwards.
I was going to go just give people a little rundown, just in case I can reach listeners who have no idea who you are, right? If we could just give just the quick rundown of your career in the intelligence services and just what happened to you, you know, and then we can go into this whole awakening and its relevance to today, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you were employed by MI5 in the 90s.
Yep.
How did you get that job in the first place?
Well, I was a journalist and I applied to an advert in a newspaper that said Godot isn't coming, and sadly got like a job in journalism. You had to send your CV up to a recruitment consultancy in London, Soho Square. And obviously I studied the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, in which Godot doesn't actually turn up. But anyway, as the recruitment process went on, I did learn it was MI5, and I became massively intrigued and wanted to work there.
Yeah, and before that happened, I mean, that was your dream was to get into journalism, was it?
Well, yeah, I had been a journalist. I'd worked for the Sunday Times. I'd run my own newspaper. I'd also had some success stringing to the tabloids when I'd been a student editor at Dundee University, and so I'd already cut my teeth in journalism even before I left university.
You studied at Dundee?
Yeah.
Okay, because you grew up in Middlesbrough, right?
Yeah, first 9 years Middlesbrough, then 9 years to 18 Beaconsfield, and then in Buckinghamshire, in the home counties near London, and then after that Dundee University. But obviously I saw the north-south divide and things like that, the working class, middle class divide with my own eyes by moving down from working class Middlesbrough to middle class Beaconsfield.
What was that like?
Well, for me it was a culture shock. It was, I kind of assumed that everywhere had heavy industry like Middlesbrough. I didn't realise that Middlesbrough was one of the most industrial places on planet Earth. And obviously it was curious because I then, left my roots. And obviously that was partly why I got so much in the football team. I think it was worth connecting with my roots. But always struggled among the middle classes of Beaconsfield. I never really fitted in because I was a Northerner and spoke with a Northern accent and stuff like that, which people probably wouldn't believe now listening to me. But yeah, and so it was quite difficult to make that transition then.
So what work did your parents do?
My dad was an engineer, but he's part of the Chartered Institute of Mechanical Engineers, but he left school without, he went to a technical school, left school without formal qualifications, got a kind of equivalent of a degree in my school, and worked in management, in engineering, building projects, stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
My mother was a nursery school teacher.
Okay. So yeah, did you enjoy studying in Dundee?
I did, yeah. No, obviously, I was an avid reader, and one of the reasons I wanted to go to university, I just want to have access to all the world's literature, basically. So I kind of ploughed my way through it, not as part of the coursework, as part of my own individual recreation. But obviously, English literature. It's a well-read subject, so I could call upon stuff I hadn't even studied, when I was answering questions in exams and stuff like that, because I'd read it elsewhere, I was an absolutely avid reader. And the fact that you only had to attend about, God knows, a handful of lectures a week, if that, I had plenty of free time for reading, and which I wanted to do, but also for boozing and socialising as well.
Yeah.
Although
So what was the kind of stuff that you were digging through at the time then?
What reading?
Yeah, book-wise. I'm not talking about,
Got heavily into Kurt Vonnegut. Still love Kurt Vonnegut, American writer, wrote famously for House 5, Champions being made into films. But also people like Nabokov wrote famously Lolita, but a whole lot of other books as well.
Yeah.
But it's just a lot of post-war American stuff. There's On the Road, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of English stuff as well from all over the place. So, yeah, when I was at Dundee University, I did a year abroad in France, teaching English as a foreign language, and then I just had to come back to Dundee, which looked like a bit of a nightmare. And then eventually finished up.
Why was it a nightmare going back?
Well, Bordeaux is this really cosmopolitan city. It's in the southwest of France. It's warm. It's a beautiful place full of tan people and things. I got off the train in Dundee, and it was like the buildings were grey, the skies were grey, the people were grey, and it was just like, I've got to spend 2 years here. I got pissed quite a bit, and then decided, well, by default, became editor of the student newspaper because no one else wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then a year later, a bit later, we won the award. I did it for a year, and then we won the award. Got a job on the Sunday Times after university on the strength of my student journalism, but also strung a few stories to the tabloids. And the biggest days of my life was trying to get a student newspaper to sell, and no one would buy it. And then we got this photographer into the medical students' initiation ceremonies. We got photographs. And we printed our front page of the naked docs exposed. And then we gave the pictures to the Sun, the Daily Record. And a couple of days later, my girlfriend came and woke me up. I was living in the newspaper office at the time. And she said to me, Dave, you've got to get up. She said, the Sun and the Record have both, they've all run out in the shops in Dundee. They're busting in 200 copies of each to each newsagents in Dundee. And the Anasac student newspaper is obviously selling as a result of this. It's sold out in the shops. You've got to get some more in the shops. So the surreal experience is like nobody wanted to take this newspaper off me. I was virtually paying them for taking me off it for a year. Suddenly people were coming up to me and taking 10 copies and putting a couple of quid in my pocket saying, I want these, they're great.
Wicked.
So, but then of course the backlash against that was that got a lot of trouble at university, all that kind of stuff. But that was a bit of a dry run for blowing the whistle. Also, you nearly got beaten up by some irate medical students. So prepared me for blowing the whistle, obviously on a much smaller scale, but one of the things I point out about the spiritual journey is God does prepare you for things. So that, and a good example of that to hold my truth as well. I mean, I got this handwritten note from the vice chancellor of the university saying, would you mind popping up and seeing me at 5 p.m. this evening? So outside normal office hours. And so I went up there, and he sat me down in the corner with the secretary of the university. They tried to tell me I'd done something wrong. I had a copy of the constitution of the publications board saying we were an independent newspaper. It was my job to expose this kind of thing going on. And they said to me, if you had pictures like again, would you publish them? And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to an independent newspaper. Of course I would. And that was that, really. So, yeah. But that was a test, obviously, whether I'd hold my truth and so on. In fact, in the end, the only thing I had to compromise was when they put out their official report, it was a complete cover-up. So I came back at the office and said, right, cover-up, stick it to the university. And I remember everybody in the office just looking at me going, Dave, after what's recently happened with all the threats and people really getting beaten up and everything else and all the trouble everybody's had, if you publish that inflammatory headline, we are all walking out right now. So I had to say, all right, okay, then. So I had to do something a bit less challenging, shall we say. But yeah, so that was my kind of university career,
yeah. Yeah, it really was a taste of things to come, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Before
I mean,
we go on, could you just track back to that time in Bordeaux? What was that like? The doing teaching. That's a bit different.
yeah, well, when I was 20, because went to Scottish University, you have a selection of subjects you do. It's not quite like the English system. We've got a separate education system. Even though I was obviously got in school in England, I was at university in Scotland. So I was doing French as a sub-sid. I thought, I quite want to speak French, so I banged a year abroad. They got me a job. Got me a job with the French government in a French school, essentially being paid to speak English 12 hours a week. But the great thing about it was I was in Bordeaux, culturally like one of France's, up there with Paris, really. Well, just after Paris kind of thing. In terms of French cities, always quite distinctive as well from the rest of France. And I got this... basically, when I went there, because I wasn't really studying French properly, I couldn't really speak French at all. The whole training course was done in French. So I didn't have a clue what was going on. And but I met this guy there who was in the same position. He couldn't really understand what was going on either. So because we were so clueless, we couldn't actually speak French to try and find a flat or anything like that. We threw ourselves on people who could, and we finished up getting a studio flat. It was like one bedroom, two fucking beds, a fucking little sink kitchen, little shower in the corner, and that was it. Because I didn't really know this guy at all, so it was like, what the fuck? But we had a kind of like a. And to start with, on paper, it looked like we were very much odds with each other. He was kind of a royalist, and he'd gone to a private school, but he was a bit of a soul boy in South London and was an Arsenal fan. Right. And on the other hand, at that point, I was still a bit of a Marxist, basically, and believed in kind of like a republic and all that kind of thing. And you would think on paper we would never have got on, but it was one of those kind of sense and sensibility things where we had a year of just essentially drinking, smoking a lot of hash, good Moroccan hash, of course, in Bordeaux, and kind of learned from each other. And at the end of it, we're both wiser human beings for it. And
how was your French by the time you left?
Brilliant, because I went out of the French woman for 5 months.
Wow.
So I spoke French. I learned to argue in French. Yeah, no, that's the test. But so my French was pretty fluent. Obviously, it was a dinner party. You had to interject something intellectually. It was quite obviously very tricky. Yeah. But on the day-to-day conversation, I could speak French, basically,
Comme ci, comme ça.
Comme ci, comme ça. No, très bien. Je parle français presque couramment.
I have no idea what that means.
I used to speak French almost fluently.
Beautiful. Well, I'm sure you'd pick it up again soon enough.
Yeah, I don't know. I quite like, the English language.
Yes. So leaving Dundee, you went straight to London.
Yeah, I went to London. I had got a job on the Sunday Times graduate fellowship scheme, basically. So straight from university. In fact, I've got to tell you a funny story as well. I made 2 job applications after leaving Dundee. One to a free sheet in Gravesend, and one to the Sunday Times. And the free sheet in Gravesend rejected me, and the Sunday Times accepted me.
There you go. Could have been a very different story.
That's my life in a nutshell, really. It's like doing the piddling things, I can't do, but doing the sort of challenging stuff at the top end, that's when I raise my game, basically. Although that said, the Sunday Times was a waste of time. It wasn't a training scheme at all. No one thought it through. So I went from so obviously it was Murdoch as well, and all my friends were saying, you used to be a lefty, you jump ship and all this kind of thing, you've taken the 30 pieces of silver and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I could get a training on the Sunday Times, and it should be brilliant. And then after that, I'll be able to literally ply my trade anywhere in the world if I worked for 3 years in the Sunday Times, one of the most prestigious newspapers in the world. So once I've got the training, I just jump ship and then go and do decent journalism elsewhere.
What would you say was the most interesting article, or maybe the one you were most proud of that you did while you were there?
Oh, fucking hell. I did nothing important.
Really?
At all there. No, I remember my first story was about people fiddling vending machines by jamming the bloody change things. It was that kind of another story as well, where this is used for cheap research. So one week they were investigating undertakers, so I had to pretend to be a member of the public and phone up all these undertakers asking for their basic costs of a funeral. But yeah, I just got completely bored with it and pretended that the guy who died was my Uncle John Thomas. Which obviously is funny, but I may well have an Uncle John Thomas who's died, so you can't make that joke.
Right.
But then after 6 months, they basically sacked me, basically.
Right.
I had a short period in sport there, which was in some ways torture, because I'm actually a football fan, but that meant Saturdays I was working, so sometimes I was getting sent to cover football matches, and I wouldn't be going to see Middlesbrough play, basically.
Yeah. And then, so what year were you there at? This is the late 80s, is it?
Yeah, sometimes 89 to 90, about May 1990, I think.
And at what point did you apply for the job with MI5 then?
There's another little bit of the story as well, where at this point, because I was being sacked by the Sunday Times, my mate, we'd had this idea, because I'd run the student newspaper at a profit. So we had this idea that we'd set up a student newspaper, but a business that we'd make a profit from. So we managed to get a bit of backing from the banks and went up to Leith in Edinburgh. Rather peculiar, we were there at the time that the action set in Train Spotting, a novel by, what's his name, Irving Welsh. But yeah, we were there at that time living in Leith, where the action of that novel's set, basically. And we ran this student newspaper. We got a few copies out, 25,000 copies to students across Scotland, and then went under because we had no cash flow and usual kind of things, basically. And it was after that, basically, I knocked around a bit doing, bloody photocopier jockey jobs kind of thing, just didn't make ends meet. And then obviously the famous advert comes up. We're obviously looking for jobs in journalism at this point. Godot isn't coming. Which for people who don't know their theatre of the absurd, there's a play by Samuel Beckett written in the 1950s called Waiting for Godot, in which Godot doesn't actually turn up.
Yeah.
So,
but you turned up.
Yeah, well, this is it. Now, obviously, I now think that advert was what I would call a come-on. And then people would say, well, why would MI5 be trying to attract you, Dave? And when I'd done the student newspaper, one of the stunts I pulled was publishing extracts of Spycatcher, which was by a former MI5 officer called Peter Wright, who had alleged in this book that MI5 had been trying to destabilise Harold Wilson's Labour government in the 1970s and pretending he was a KGB agent, basically, the Prime Minister of the day. So we, because it was banned in Britain, we published it in my student newspaper. So I actually then broke an injunction. So I've been breaking injunctions now for a good 30 years of my life, basically. But yeah, so that's why there'd be a come on, because they would look at that and think, look, I didn't get time, not getting the publicity, are they, for God's sake? So nothing happened. But they'd look at it and someone would quietly file away, there's a troublemaker. Better watch him, see what he does.
Right.
And then, obviously, as a result of that, they then... Sorry, I'm trying to see if my drug dealer coming. As a result of that, they... what was I going to say again? So I lost my phone a second, hang on.
What was the job interview like?
Yeah, anyway, so they wanted to get me, basically... The reason to come on was to neutralise me, essentially, to get me into MI5 and make me in their image.
Yeah.
Rather than having me around, outside the tent pissing in, basically.
Yes.
At
the time, am I right? They were looking for less sort of, they were looking for more working class kind of individual.
More lower middle class and more normal people, basically.
Yeah.
And also the fact that obviously I had an experience running a business and being on the Sunday Times and stuff like that. They knew that it was moving from static targets to moving targets in the form of terrorism, so they'd need people who could actually then respond to that, basically. I went through this recruitment process. It's kind of well known. I went to a recruitment consultancy first, and tell you what the job was. The second one, they say, it's the Ministry of Defence, but it's not the Ministry of Defence. Go along and have a look. And when I'm in the interview room, it's a strange thing. It's a building in London's not occupied. There's a plaque on the door. You know, it's like, what the hell's going on here? Get in this interview room after an hour and a half of being quizzed, the interview starts famous with you like, what were your religious or political beliefs when you were 12? And it's like, what the fuck? What sort of job interview is this?
Yeah.
And then eventually we started discussing the intelligence and all this kind of thing, and you say, well, eventually you say this must be MI5. And they say yes, and you sign the Official Secrets Act. And of course, once I signed the Official Secrets Act, they noted at the first interview I'd mentioned publishing extracts of Spycatcher when it was under injunction, because essentially in the first interview I didn't know what it was. I thought it was journalism, so I thought that would be something that would impress them.
Yeah.
So they asked me in MI5, why did you do that? And I said it was not the purpose of the intelligence services to destabilise democratic government. And they said yes, but we didn't do it. And then they said, what about the national security implications? And I said, well, this had already been published in America and Australia. Anybody who's going to glean anything interesting from it or damaging would have done so then. They're not going to come to my small circulation newspaper and finding it. And then went through several.
They thought they thought you had a bit of spunk. Then they recognised something in you that they liked, obviously.
Yeah, indeed, yes.
And
whether that come on goes deeper than that is interesting, though, because obviously Goddo isn't coming has the word God in it, doesn't it? Basically, and obviously in my final understanding of the world, it may have been something from the secret societies, or it may have been God himself. Who knows?
Were you always looking for signs?
No, obviously then I wasn't.
No,
obviously I noted the word God was in Goddo in a play I quite liked, but at the time I was a total atheist, so I had no belief in God.
So you were just purely following your curiosity, sort of thing.
Well, the funny thing was, I kept getting through the stages of recruitment for MI5. Obviously, quite a long and involved process involving things like a security interview, 2 days of tests where you go through, you chair meetings, you do intelligence tests. It's all quite boom, one after the other to really test you, basically. And I was going through the process, and I remember going up to Scotland to see my old mates from university and getting really pissed and stoned with that. So I've got to tell you this, I'm being recruited by MI5. They're going to be stupid, Dave. You're a bloody ex-Marxist, things like that. You're a bloody be a journalist and activist. What the hell will MI5 want with you? And so I don't really know. But I keep getting through these recruitment stages. And then obviously I was massively inquisitive because in the 80s when I'd been cutting my teeth in journalism, there'd been this Spycatcher case. And that was when they passed the 1989 Official Secrets Act, which was obviously the one they subsequently then used to prosecute me.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting timing.
So I'd always been interested in the intelligence services. So I just thought, it's one of those things where people think, why did you join? It's just, well, I had a chance to join MI5, the secret state. If you've got that opportunity, you take it to see it for yourself, to see, if everything you read about it was true or not.
Did you enjoy it, working there?
I did. I mean, when the management let you get on the job, it was very stimulating. After all, stopping terrorism is protecting lives. That's good spiritual work. But the frustration is that the bureaucrats seem to be always trying to stop you.
Yeah.
In fact, when I left, a very good friend, who was quite a company man, said to me, he said, you work your bollocks off to try and protect national security, and everywhere you turn, there's bureaucrats trying to stop you.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
All the kind of, the sort of, what's the word, like the way you imagine it to be, it is quite true, is it then? It's all sort of bit bureaucracy, and you can't really get things done that you want to get. It's like any other institution, isn't it, really? Like there's...
the job I used to have, I'm a sentencing guy at a desk, I'm an intelligence officer, but I'm making sure the right telephone taps are on, the right people are followed around, So I've got an in-train and out-train, I'm processing information, but the information I'm processing is not about new toothbrushes or something, it's about whether people are going to live or die, essentially.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Was it well paid?
No, not at all. You got 10% more than the civil servant of the equivalent grade. So it wasn't well paid. Nobody did it for money. And in those days, obviously, this was the early 90s, you could live in London on that sort of salary. Not comfortably, but you could.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it now.
Yeah. And so, you worked there for, was it 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years, yeah, from November 91 to October 96.
And at what point did, you start to sort of recognise the funny business going on? Like when was the episode? Because I understand you started to get a relationship with MI6. Is that right?
Yeah, eventually I was posted to the Middle Eastern section, being the Libyan desk, and was responsible for things like bringing the two suspects for Lockerbie to trial. The attack when essentially the Libyans bombed the American jet out of the sky in December '88. But yeah, so that brought me into contact with MI6, and obviously I was a good manager. I worked very effectively, and because I worked very effectively with them, they took me into their confidence. So they briefed me about an operation in which they had an agent in essentially Al Qaeda in Libya who was wanting to assassinate Gaddafi and take power in Libya. Now, this was puzzling to me because by this point, like it was only 1996, the intelligence service had identified Islamic extremists as the new threat to the West, basically.
Yeah. What happened to you that day? Like after that meeting, like what was going through your mind at that time?
Well, after I was first told about this.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing was I didn't take it that seriously because MI6 had come up with various crazy ideas before, and they hadn't happened. So I just thought it'd be more their nonsense, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't really take it seriously until they then said before Christmas 1995 they paid money to this guy, and that was obviously when I decided to leave the service. This was funding terrorism, and I didn't want to be on the side of funding terrorism. So in my mind, I thought I've got to leave the service. Obviously, I had to find a new job, so I was there for another 10 months basically, but nevertheless was trying to get out of them as quickly as possible. And then shortly after that, I found out from other sources that the operation had gone ahead, and it was obviously using exactly the same modus operandi as had been planned by these coup plotters. So I knew it was them, and then the man in MI6 confirmed it to me at the next meeting. So at this point I knew that the British intelligence services funded terrorism, and I had a very strong hunch they didn't have the permission of government. And when I'd raised for my bosses in MI5 saying this might be illegal, they kind of just wanted to push it to one side, basically. But that was it. That was the point where I was able to get out. I thought I'd try to protect people, not be party to operations in which people might die. And indeed, people had died. People did die, but they reckon about a dozen people died in that attack.
Was it a quick decision to leave? Were you like, oh gosh, these guys are, you know?
As soon as they told me they paid some money to them, that was when I made the decision to leave. Obviously, when I then saw it happen, my blood ran cold, and I increased my efforts to get another job so I could get out, basically.
But you were, I mean, there was that sort of practical thing of, oh God, I've got to pay the bills. All right, I'll stick it out until I get to, I've got something to go to, and then I'll go, right?
That was it, yeah. Obviously, I had to pay the rent.
Yeah.
I mean, very good if I weren't resigned on principle at that point, but you've got to pay the rent, and we were paying some ridiculous, £850 between me and my Annie, my girlfriend at the time. So that's a lot of money to try and raise,
Yeah.
And if she'd just been, and obviously if I'd resigned, it would have been very difficult for her to stay there as well. So
yeah.
So we had to wait till we had other jobs.
I guess it was only Annie that you confided in at this point about any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no one else. I mean, obviously, if I don't tell anybody, then I don't have to suspect them, do I? If I tell them, I might have to suspect them at some point. So don't tell anybody. So don't tell absolutely nobody anything. In fact, it's funny. Just before we left to blow the whistle, my brother came round and he said, "Can I borrow your car?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "When shall I bring it back?" I said, "Oh, just bring it back if you want." He sort of thought, at the time he thought that's a bit weird. Why is Dave saying just bring the car back you want? Sure, he needs his car in a few days' time. He's got work and stuff, And obviously, at the time, I was so distracted by thinking, "Oh my God, back to blow the whistle. What's about to happen?" Take it as long as you like, mate.
What car did you have at the time?
At that point, I had, some sort of Peugeot thing. I think it was quite a nippy little Peugeot 306, something like that.
Nice.
But it's a company car.
Where did you live?
I lived in Pimlico.
Oh, very nice.
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
Did you and Annie live together?
Yeah. We famously moved in together 3 months after knowing each other. It just at least came up for renewal. I was living somewhere I could get out very quickly, so we just said, let's give it a go. And we did.
Did you guys work in the same department?
Never in the same department. We worked in the same branch sometimes, but in different departments.
Right. So were you two together at the time this all went down, and so you would go home, have dinner together or whatever, and then you went, gosh, you never guess what happened to me today? Is that how it sort of went down, or?
Yeah. And obviously there'd been other things going on before that. There'd been all sorts of things going on to demoralise us both.
Yeah.
So we wanted to get out. And so that's part, obviously, why Annie was in agreement as well. She'd become fairly demoralised by, say, just this complete ridiculous attitude to everything. It was just, honest to God, it was like Alice in Wonderland there at times. It really was.
And in this time, you also, to cover yourselves, took some documents. That's
I
right?
did indeed.
Yes.
Well, what happened is I first met a journalist before I left MI5. Made contact with the idea of doing an off-the-record story. And so I first met journalists. I first met Nick Fielding in the Mail on Sunday in about July '96, so about 3 months before I left the service. And obviously he said, take anything you can to prove it. And didn't want to, but I thought, well, people might deny these things, so I did take some documents, yes. Obviously just with the intention of proving that I really did work for MI5, and that what I was saying was true.
It must have been quite a thrill. Like, it sounds like movie stuff.
Yeah, of course it was.
Did you have like one of those microfilm cameras and just like?
No, not MI5. Once I'd blown the whistle, was on the other side of it. It was much more like that.
Right.
When I was there, I was largely by the desk, but obviously all that stuff goes on, obviously as well. I'm not saying that doesn't go on, but it's just I wasn't doing that stuff. I was directing the operations. And obviously I did have successes there, arrests and stuff like that. Famously set up the beginning of the relationship that meant the two Lockerbie suspects were eventually handed over for trial. Expelled a Libyan spy that they let into the country to try and recruit and failed miserably, or in fact, Libyan terrorist, in fact. All sorts of stuff, all sorts of successes, basically, but yeah. And then obviously, the really embarrassing bit of my life I don't like to talk about is I had a job. I left MI5 in October '96, but didn't blow the whistle until August 1997. In that period, I was a management consultant, to my eternal shame.
Were you good at it?
No. I thought that I could transfer my skills to something like management consultancy, but what I realised, I knew nothing about the intricacies of modern business, which is not actually knowing about business as such, it's just knowing all their fucking jargon and nonsense. And also that it was obviously quite transparent to people. I had absolutely no enthusiasm for what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I say it got to this point. I don't know if I've ever told the story in public before. I've told it to plenty of my friends, but it's quite a funny story. It gets to the point, obviously I'm working as a management consultant, so I'm actually working, straight enough, in Reading, near where I am now. But when I get the bus, I actually literally pass the office I used to work in when I was in this management consultancy, on secondment to this thing called the Intervention Board. And anyway, yeah, that was in Reading. But
It sounds like David Shayler became David Brent.
It wasn't, almost, but clueless, even more clueless than David Brent, I'll tell you that. I've got to tell this story that we got to a point where I was working these long hours as a management consultant, commuting and stuff, long hours commuting back, basically just having enough time to have my dinner and go to bed, and just doing this 5 days a week. So coming back on a Friday, I just basically take a load of pills and try and wake myself up and have a decent weekend of it.
Yeah.
And then, but that obviously doesn't really coincide well with management consultancy at all. There's two famous stories. One of them where I'm in this, we have this big fucking session, me and Annie, at this place in Norfolk over a bank holiday weekend, taking loads of drugs and stuff. Anyway, eventually I've got to go back to work as a management consultant. I'm sitting there the morning back, and I just look at this flow charts and bloody spreadsheets, and they just don't make any sense to me. And my brain is so attuned to this kind of I've been taking and stuff that I just can't make any sense of them. And I actually think at that moment I'm going to get up, walk into my boss's office and just say, I'm off. Not I'm resigning, I'm off, basically. I don't want a reference. I don't want to work out a month's notice. I'm just going to leave right now. And at the time, I was kind of on the point of blowing the whistle, so I could have taken that risk, and I didn't. I can't imagine what would happen if I got home and said to anyone, I just walked out of my job today. But a really funny story there, which I've never told anybody before because I think it was right, was one morning I was going out a weekend full of bloody partying, taking it, God knows what, and went into work and had this meeting. I just couldn't focus on what I was saying. And I just kept nodding my head to my boss at this meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, I just suddenly heard him say, so that's settled then. You're going to Scotland to look at the contracts. So I went, yeah, okay, thinking some minutes had come round and I'd find out what I was supposed to be doing, but they didn't come round. So I decided to bluff it, thinking, well, I'll go up to Scotland. So I got ready to go up to Scotland. Went up there, thinking these guys would know about the contracts. Meet this guy, and he says, oh, we've got the contracts here, and I've got to choose them. So it's like I'm walking up and down this whole big thing of files and stuff, literally randomly picking off files, looking at them a little bit, and then deciding whether I need them or not, just on the basis of looking like I know what I'm doing, but actually happening completely randomly. And then sit there for a few hours, look like I'm making some notes, and then make it off to my friends in Glasgow and go and drink a load of whiskey and smoke a load of weed, basically. But at that point, I kind of knew that I was going to blow the whistle. I was kind of going AWOL. The only thing was how long could I avoid my boss by saying I was working for home and so on when he found out I'd been up to Glasgow and done piss all, basically. But I got away with it by the skin of my teeth.
Did Annie get work, or was it just you?
Yeah, she was a management consultant as well, curiously.
Oh, right.
Me and Annie, we walked out of MI5 at the same moment and also both got jobs as management consultants.
Wow.
Weird.
Did she do better than you?
What, as a management consultant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did. Yeah, absolutely. She was a woman, basically. They sent her out there to try and fucking win work, you know. She was a good-looking woman, sounded posh from Cambridge. People thought she knew what she was talking about. She was very good at that kind of thing. So, yeah, no, she's far better management consultant than I was.
Is it easier to bluff it if you sound posh?
Yeah, that's the thing. Some people think I sound posh, but I'm not that posh. And the management consultants I went to was much more kind of down to earth. Hers was one of those airy-fairy kind of, you know, management resources, kind of human, whatever ones. Mine was quite a down-to-earth kind of, you know, businessy, hardcore one, you know. So,
when you guys got home from work of an evening, was there a lot of talk about what had gone down in MI5 and, you know, when you were going to blow the whistle, that kind of thing? I mean, was it just always there, or?
It was never, ever discussed in the flat, just in case the flat was bugged. Never, ever. We used to go things like, fancy going out for a drink and things like that. We'd do things like that. But never, obviously, once you've worked the intelligence, says, you know, to avoid their measures. So just in case we had been blown, but somehow, we never discussed it in the flat ever.
So did the two of you want to go, hey, should we go out? And then you go out just so you could have a chat about it, or was it not?
No, well, we'd also, in case we were being followed, make it look realistic. We would actually go to a bar. So if we say we're going out for a drink, we'd go out for a drink to the bar, or if we say like we need to go to the supermarket, we'd actually go to the supermarket, but we'd be talking about what we need to do.
Yeah. And then, so when did that decision finally get made, and you actually went through with it? I know you had the meetings with which journalist was it?
It was Nick Fielding and Mark Hollingsworth for the Mail on Sunday, basically. But we'd also been to see publishers in London and all sorts of things. But eventually, in December '96, when I met this journalist, I said to him, look, I'm prepared to do it on the record. And that was it. That started as a series of events, and eventually it runs with the Mail on Sunday very quickly, wanting to do the story. I've got to say as well, I used to often joke as an atheist that Middlesbrough Football Club, which is essentially my religion, used to mirror my life. So while my life's all these crazy things are going on, going in and out of newspaper offices, secret stuff, trying to interest publishers, all this, anti-surveillance measures, Middlesbrough are going to their first Wembley finals for the first time ever in the form of the League Cup and the FA Cup, basically. And there were lots of replays and stuff. So at the same time, I'm sort of nipping off to try and see people clandestinely. I'm also nipping off to see football matches clandestinely.
How are they doing now?
Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
They're bottom half of the second flight, basically, the Championship. They've had one season of the Premiership in about the last 10 years, basically. It's probably the worst runs they've had. But I do think we divorced company now, by the way, because that was my religion. But I became spiritual, and obviously you ditch your religion when you become spiritual. Spirituality is not about religion, it's about love. And obviously people know the famous story with Middlesbrough. I tell that, there's 2 nights where, well, not even 2 nights, it's a story which begins with me early on spirituality and doing Kabbalah to essentially get Middlesbrough into the AFA Cup. But to cut a long story short, there comes a moment when we're 3-0 down in aggregate, means we've got to score 4 goals because of the away goals to go through, and there's 70 minutes left of the tie, the second leg of the tie. And I have a moment for the first time where I turn around to the universe and just say, look, I don't even know that I asked for a sign, but I'm going to meditate love to the opposition fans, to the opposition players, to the referee for the rest of this game. And if you're there, and if we win this game, I will see that as a sign you're there. And this happens. Middlesbrough suddenly start playing like the Brazil 1970 team. But even then, God keeps you waiting. When the Israelites are in the Red Sea, the water comes right up to their noses before it parts. He takes you there at the very last moment. It was in the last minute we scored the winner. The 3-3 draw would have been no good. We would have gone out on away goals. And I thought that was a miracle, except the second leg of that game, we're in the semi-final, obviously, we're only 1-0 down from the first leg, not 2-0. All this time thinking, it's going to be a piece of piss. But within the first 20 minutes, they've scored 2 goals. So again, we're 3-0 down. So there comes this moment when, rather than holding my head in despair, I lift my head up and say, well, we did this last time. If you're there, God, let's do it again. And so we did, and again, exactly the same thing happened. We actually scored to win in the last minute 4-3. At that point, I hit white light. I don't quite know what happened, but when I came back to Earth, I was standing there making the cross, and 35,000 people were chanting EIO, which is a way of pronouncing the Tetragrammaton, which is Yod Hey Vav Hey in Hebrew, which is God's name, basically. So that was my sign, obviously, that God was there. In that moment, I believed in my heart. The next day, I was struck dumb. Not people say I'm not normally a man who's short of words, but that day, I'd seen something so extraordinary happen that I had to believe in God in my heart.
There you go.
Yeah. So the extraordinary Middlesbrough story. I think we've kind of lost the plot slightly.
Yes. How were Middlesbrough doing then? In '97 then?
They were saying they were going to Wembley finals for the first time, but they lost both of the Wembley finals and got relegated.
And then what happened to you after that? The articles dropped in the mail then?
Well, the funny thing is, the articles came out, they didn't publish the main story about Gaddafi. They published some of the other stuff, like files on politicians, the investigation on phone tapping a Guardian journalist, files on people like John Lennon, and other weird little things, basically, and some of the bureaucracy in the service.
Why didn't they roll with the Gaddafi story?
I think they chickened out. I think also there's many spies on Fleet Street. That's what I think now and happens. I think they dissuaded them from running the bigger story. In fact, we had bigger stories. They didn't run either of them. And then, obviously, I'm abroad by this point. We take off one day from Heathrow and land in Amsterdam, and then we've got to wait until it comes out. That's Saturday evening, and then it does. Next day we go to Utrecht. We got to Utrecht. We get to Utrecht railway station. I pick up the copies of the Sunday papers, and I look at them. And we're only on the front page of the Mail on Sunday. I think, oh shit, no one's running with this. And then I realise that they're all the first editions, so it's okay. And then it sort of goes from there, basically.
So this was all pre-planned. That was your plan. Yeah. You were going to leave the country and let the story run out.
Yeah, I wanted to be out of the country when the story was published. I was going to sit like a lame duck getting arrested. I'm not that fucking stupid. They would gladly bang me up and keep me there as long as they wanted, couldn't they? So, yeah. We blew the whistle. Story came out. Also, one of the funny stories, I hadn't told anybody. I couldn't tell anybody at all. So for example, my mother, who'd been, strange enough, was in Holland also at that point, been seeing my father when he was working, got on a plane home, picked up a copy of The Independent, sat down in a chair, opened it up in front of her, and there is a photograph of me looking out from the front page at her, basically.
What were your parents' reaction to it?
Well, at the start, they obviously thought, God almighty, what's he done, kind of thing. But I did explain to them I had good reason for doing what I was doing and so on, and that I'd investigated the legality of the Official Secrets Act. It seemed to be on my side. So they were supportive after I'd explained it, yeah.
And do you just have the one brother?
I've got two younger brothers.
Two younger brothers and no sisters?
No sisters, no.
Two younger brothers. What were they? What was their reaction?
Well, they were good, but my middle brother Phil, I'd actually sent some money into his bank account to look after, because we got paid some money expenses by the mail on Sunday. And obviously I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't want to put it in my own bank account because they'd just freeze it. So I'd sent it to him, and they arrested him on the grounds of proceeds of crime. Oh. Yeah, so that was, they went to work to arrest him as well. But the work were very supportive.
But did anything happen to him?
No, they kept him on police bail for a while.
Right. Was he miffed?
Obviously, but he was very understanding. He understood that obviously it all becomes part of the psyop, a game of morale. They're trying to fuck your friends up, your family, don't they? Anything they can to try and sap you with morale and try to dissuade you from doing what you're doing. Yeah.
And so what happened next? You guys were in Amsterdam.
Well, can I say as well, obviously I've got to say as well, when I blew the whistle, I thought I'd get a honest hearing from the government, because the new Labour government had just been elected under Tony Blair. They'd been in office for about 3 months, and they were elected on a platform of human rights, freedom of information, ethical foreign policy. And this, to me, seemed to tick all the boxes. They could have really done something to really advance those causes, using my case, of course. But of course that didn't happen. Blair sided with the intelligence services. And obviously we're in hiding in Holland, but we're getting the British press to see who's following it up. I did an interview for Newsnight, BBC Two's programme, in the Amstel Hotel in Amsterdam. And then of course what was happening, when I was picking up the papers, of course, we were reading all about Princess Diana, saying things like she had an announcement to make to journalists and photographs of whether she's pregnant or not. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the Saturday, we jumped ship from Holland down to the south of France. So we actually travelled through Paris. And on the way down, we actually hear that the British government's taken out an injunction against the Mail on Sunday to prevent them publishing anything else. And but I thought this was great, because this meant the story would go around the world. Ex-British intelligence officer trying to say something really serious, and he's just been banned by the British government. I mean, that was just playing straight into my hands, basically. So I went to bed that night thinking, game over. Next morning, get up, there's a documentary about Princess Diana on the television, on French television. It's like, what the hell's this doing on this time of day, kind of thing, you know? And then the last words of the documentary were, La Princesse Diana est morte aujourd'hui. Princess Diana died today.
Yes.
And it's like, I remember just like, what the fuck? You know, that's it. We knocked down the headlines, we've got no protection. You know, whatever you factor into your plans, you cannot factor in that the world's most photographed woman is going to die in the middle of your whistleblowing, basically.
Goodbye, England's Rose.
Well, yes, indeed, it was. But yeah, and obviously I'm not trying to disparage Princess Diana or the family on their mourning anyway. I'm just saying that obviously that was going to be the case. Once she died, they were going to use that to keep us out of the headlines. And I do say, you know, if you've got a plan to kill Princess Diana because she's about to bear Dodi Al-Fayed's child, doing it at that point was a bloody good timing, because it also knocks out the headlines. And that's exactly how the Zionist New World Order works.
Mm. And so were you suddenly, I mean, how did you feel at this point?
How did I feel? Well, obviously, we were kind of thinking what we're going to do, what's going to happen next, because we not thought this was going to happen. We thought there'd be something one way or the other. But to be knocked out the headlines, it's kind of like something had set adrift. So we were kind of bombed around for about a month, and then strange car. What's going on? Bombed around for about a month around France, and then you go to hotels, things like that, and then eventually Annie had to go back to the UK, but she was arrested under the Official Secrets Act because she'd also given an interview to the Mail on Sunday. In fact, I've actually seen the edition of the Mail on Sunday of that day of Princess Diana's death, and it actually starts with me threatening more whistleblowing, the injunction. Then next thing it's Annie, because she's saying she's got things to say. Next thing it's Diana in car crash, and then it's like Diana dead, basically. But yeah, we got finished up, cut a long story short, and getting a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in France in hiding.
So
really
Annie had to go back on her own?
She went back on her own because she had given an interview, but she hadn't really revealed much, so we took a calculation that she'd get away with it, and they did arrest her when she got back, but they then released her on police bail.
And so how long were you in France on your own for after that then?
Well, what happened was she came back after about a week or so, but I was the first one to go to the house because I was by myself. I left her at this hotel in place in the Pyrenees, then have to get a train to Limoges and a taxi from Limoges to this farmhouse, basically. And that was it, yeah. To give you an idea what it was like no light pollution there at all. So it was so dark, I couldn't actually find the front door of the house. I had to literally feel around the house to feel the windows and then the door, basically, to get in. That's how dark it was because there was no light pollution. And yeah, kind of like, so we lived there. We used to go to Amsterdam every month, stock up on supplies and vital things you need, your magic mushrooms, your marijuana, have a good time, and then go back to this really idyllic place. And obviously it was a real tonic. In fact, I always say, things happen in my life I think are terrible, but I actually realise that God actually intended the very best thing for me.
I was going to say, was this a good time for you guys?
Yeah, it was, because if we'd been thrown into the whole maelstrom of that thing from that point, I wasn't really fit at that point to do it. I was knackered. I'd spent bloody years working in Babylon, which doesn't suit me at all. You know, people will see the pictures of me there, about 4 or 5 stone heavier than I am now. And obviously, you know, just it taking its toll, the stresses and so on, obviously taking a lot of drugs, drinking a lot of fucking alcohol. So it was great to spend 10 months essentially in the countryside, relaxing. And I famously wrote my novel that now forms part of the Third and Final Testament.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and so my novel is my great love in life, basically. In fact, one thing I said when I left in life I wanted to do was write a novel at some point. But I was still in MI5, I began it. Even though I was a management consultant, I still tried to come home and do a little bit on it. Wrote 60,000 words in 2 years, and then went on the run. So Diana died, so I'm in this farmhouse with nothing to do. So I write 150,000 words in about 3 months. It's just insane. I'm just like possessed by inspiration, and I write this novel. And obviously I can edit it a bit, but by July '98 it's finished. And I've looked at the original foreword, and it's dated the 24th of July 1998, which is a week before I was arrested in Paris.
So can you tell us about that? How this chapter came to a close, basically?
Yeah, what happens is, obviously, this story about MI6 funding Al-Qaeda to assassinate Colonel Gaddafi in Libya hasn't come out. So what I've done is I've given a secret interview to Mark Urban of the BBC, the diplomatic and defence correspondent. So that's in the can in the event of me being arrested or something like that. And anyway, basically what I do is I try and get it out with both the Mail on Sunday and the Sunday Times, but I don't want to let either of them let each other know. So I have this famous weekend in Paris where I'm running around trying to make sure that they both get the story and neither of them knows what's going on. So I'm telling lies about what I'm doing to them and all this kind of thing to provide cover. And then eventually, and also at the same point, there's supposed to be this renegade MI6 officer called Richard Tomlinson, who actually then we make contact with him in his hotel room, and he actually disappears. The hotel's denying knowledge of it, which is peculiar. So there's always weird things going on. I even switch hotel rooms during the weekend just in case. But then I come back, curious enough, from watching Middlesbrough playing on the box, watching a pre-season friendly, would you believe, in an Irish bar in Middlesbrough, in Paris. And I come back at the hotel and I get accosted by this little guy who says, "Êtes-vous Monsieur Shayler? Are you Mr. Shayler?" And I say, yeah, who are you, kind of thing, thinking on the hotel staff. And then he says, "La Police Nationale." And that was it. It was like, oh my God, they've got me. Yeah. And
La Police Nationale.
Sorry?
La Police Nationale.
La Police Nationale, yeah.
Yeah. So they took you in?
And then they basically took me to the Ministry of the Interior in Paris. And then they took me in. I came out of this lobby, and and I'd been there before. I'd been there in my work with MI5, and I got to see the French service, DST, the Department Direction de la Surveillance de la Territoire, but the French equivalent of MI5. And I had actually said, you have to mention your colleagues in the Libyan section. After that, it all changed. It was all like, at that point, I thought I was a serious, spy or something. They then started providing me with Coca-Cola and coffee and cigarettes and things.
So it was a bit of a waiting. It became a bit of a waiting room, did it?
Well, yeah, they booked me in, but then they booked me into the basic French penal system after that. They had to, because the English had requested an extradition.
Yeah.
And then when I also went to the basic French penal system, it was just obviously treated like a criminal.
So yeah, you got banged up in France.
Yeah, banged up in La Santé prison. They put me in what's called the VIP section of the prison, which is where they put sort of more middle-class prisoners, shall we say, people who work for the state. It was just a bit of a joke that if you watch the kind of news in France, anybody high profile had been arrested, they'd be with us the next morning having breakfast. So when I first arrived, the other prisoners said, "Oh, we saw you arrest on the news last night. We thought you were coming."
What was that time like?
Well, obviously, it was the first time I've been incarcerated in life. It's a funny business. I remember, but obviously what I remember was when I had a cell to myself, thank God, but I just remember the cell door slamming shut and sitting there on the bed and just thinking, today I used a legal route to report the fact the British intelligence service had been funding our terrorist enemies and murdering people to the British Prime Minister, and I'm the one now sitting in a prison cell. This is insane. And obviously, I wanted to get angry about that. I felt a great burning sense of injustice, but couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my anger. So I lit a Marlboro and just contemplated the situation and thought, got to knuckle down and get through this, basically.
And I suppose at this point, so when was the last time you'd had contact with Annie? I suppose you hadn't. She must have just found out about this stuff on the news.
No, what happened was when I was being arrested, they asked to see my pièce d'identité. So I said my passport was in the hotel room upstairs, knowing full well it wasn't there, but knowing that would alert Annie to the fact I'd been arrested. If it hadn't been for that, she wouldn't have known. They would have just got me away. So then Annie phoned up the Mail on Sunday journalist we were with, Nick Fielding, and he had literally hold the front page situation, and it's like, MI5 swoop on Paris or whatever it was, and getting nicked. And another funny little story is my brother was at a family wedding, and he'd gone to his car to have a little smoke, and obviously when he'd got in the car, the radio had gone on. So he was just listening to the radio. Suddenly the news comes on, and the first item on the news was that I'd been arrested in Paris. So he just started thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to go and tell my family that Dave's been arrested at a family wedding."
It's a nice wedding gift there. Yeah. God, I mean, what a roller coaster.
Yeah, well, I say, what a roller coaster indeed. Yeah, no, so, we haven't got the inciting bits yet.
Would you say this was quite? This is a pretty low point, though.
Well, obviously, with all these things, it's stressful being challenged in the way I have, but on the whole, it's been a lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed life. I've kept a smile on my face. I've had dark periods, obviously. Who wouldn't in my circumstances? But I don't think many other people would have shown the strength and character, moral judgment to come through it in the way that I have, basically. At the right time, I made the right decisions. I told the right truths. And obviously, there comes a moment on my spiritual journey, which happened even when I was an atheist, where I decided I was going to throw the entire truth at them, even though they were trying to kill me at the time. Anybody disputes these things, I can talk them through the stories, but certainly one of them went to see go up to Paris to see Mohammed Al-Fayed's head of security to talk about the death of Diana, and the driver falls asleep at the wheel at about 90, 100 miles an hour, and hits the central reservation, but somehow the car goes up in the air, comes back down the road. As it hits the road, he bounces and he wakes up and gets control of the car. And I've had a few like that, which at the time I used to joke. Someone up there likes me because I was an atheist, but honestly I now realise that I had the protection of God and that they couldn't kill me despite their best efforts. And those efforts have included things like shellfish food poisoning, which is a very slow form of death from asphyxiation, with meningitis, and I can tell you now with both of those two, I actually used marijuana tea as my medicine, and in both cases it worked extremely effectively. If I hadn't done that in both cases, I would most likely be dead by now.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go.
So, look, before we pick up the story, just track back there. So you went to see Mohammed Al-Fayed while you were still in France. Is that right?
Yeah, we went up to see his head of security to start with, and we met him there as well.
And were you both in the car, and there was a car accident?
But yeah, the car didn't. Well, there wasn't actually an accident in the end. To say the car was everything carried on okay, but she was in the car as well. Yeah.
That's pretty hairy stuff.
Pretty serious stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, this is. I mean, I remember you telling me this story briefly once, but I didn't realise quite how soon after the Princess Di and Dodi's car accident this was. This was what, a year after?
It was about a month or so after.
A month after?
Yeah, about a month afterwards.
What was that meeting like?
It was extraordinary, obviously, because we'd worked in the intelligence services. They wanted us to look at an expert eye through the Princess Diana thing. And obviously what I was trying to tell them is that I know that MI6 has paid to have people killed as well. And then obviously there is a famous moment, the reason we keep talking to them is that Mohammed Al-Fayed has some documents alleging that MI6 and the CIA conspiring to kill Princess Diana. I get up there, take a look at these documents, and within about 20 seconds point 6 reasons out why they're obvious fakes.
Yeah.
So I kind of, did my bit there as well.
What was it?
But that was my first. Sorry.
What was it? You met face to face with him?
Yeah, I met him. Yeah, he's a very nice man. Very nice man. Obviously, massively misrepresented in the media. Down to earth man. Obviously, distraught at losing his son. You know, you can be well on the way to being a billionaire, but if you've lost your son in suspicious circumstances like that, what is your life? You know. And obviously wanted to find out what had happened, as any parent would, you know. But it was a man who, totally not a very, very normal bloke for a man who was, a multi-millionaire.
Yeah. How did he get in touch with you?
Through my solicitor, John Wadham at Liberty.
Right.
Yeah, they knew they had my telephone number at Liberty. So that's how they first made contact.
So you were in France in this. Was it like an open prison then?
What was that, sorry?
Was it an open prison in France?
No, it was public prison. I was in a cell and locked up every day. But we had 6 hours a day out of the cells.
The criminals there. What were you with? Like,
largely people who'd done things like white collar crimes, basically.
Yeah.
But there were people who were agents of the state who'd done like terrorism. bank robbery and things like that. So there were people there who were actually violent offenders. But yeah, on the whole, just white collar criminals basically.
And so, how long did it take before they got you shipped back to the UK then?
Well, what happened was we went through a series of hearings, and once the French got the paperwork through, they kind of laughed at it and declared me to be a political prisoner, and then freed me.
Oh, okay. So the UK didn't. Did you chose? So you got arrested because the
Yeah, what
UK
happened
asked you to get arrested, asked them to arrest you.
Yeah, no, so I got to prison, but I got let out, so I was then free to live in Paris for 2 years, and obviously I was pretty, thinking, well, if you're going to put me in prison for talking about this stuff, I'm going to have a go back at them. So we briefed journalists, put documents on the internet to prove what I was saying was true, because this had come out, the Panorama special, based on the interview I'd given to Mark Urban I was mentioning earlier, had been shown. The BBC had stood up to the government and shown this, so people knew what was going on, and I then started to lobby and show more of it and brief journalists and all sorts of things.
So you went back to your little cottage then in France then, or
No, I literally I've never been back there since the day I left to go up to Paris and was arrested. Never ever been back.
do you hope to go back there one day so you can finish those novels?
Sorry?
Do you hope to go back there one day so you can finish those novels?
No, the novel's finished. The novel's finished. What was I going to say? No, we got a flat in Paris, basically, and lived in Paris for 2 years.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, no, it was great fun. Yeah, no, great fun. Great fun living in Paris, and also briefing journalists. Never got paid for my information, but yeah. Got paid. Never got paid for information, but got taken outside. Did you want to split it up? Yeah.
This is the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I'm 30 or 20.
Okay. You come up there.
Yep. Sorry about that. I'm just sorting out this weed. Where were we?
So you saw out the 90s in Paris then?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, the late 90s in Paris, yeah. So journalists would take me out for lunch at these very nice restaurants and things like that. So it was a very good lifestyle, in fact. I remember one week joking at the end of this week, I'd been out for 5 meetings with journalists at lunchtime. Obviously, I used to involve their drinking as well. And I came back on the Friday evening and I had to write a best man speech for a friend's wedding. I wasn't obviously going, but he nominated me as the best man even though I was in France. So I had to write the best man speech even though someone else was going to be there delivering it. And I remember joking, like, all these literary lunches are wearing me out, basically. A bit like the Monty Python sketch. We took them a merry dance, and then they sued for peace. They said, if you come back, we'll give you bail. So the offer of bail, I came back. And it was quite big. We were rolling news at the time, big story, all the papers, everything.
How much was the bail?
The bail was just they took my passport. That's all the bail was.
Oh.
So I say they wanted me to run. Obviously, I'm an ex-MI5 officer. You take my passport. So fucking what? You don't think I know how to get out of the country without a passport? I mean, come on. So they wanted me to run, really. Obviously, if they'd been serious, they had like my brother's house as the bail. Knowing that I wouldn't run because I wouldn't put my brother in a position where his house would be lost.
So, when did you decide to head back then from France?
Why did I decide to head back?
When did you decide? Yeah, and yeah, you can say why as well.
Well, basically just because I wanted to get back to England. I didn't want to live abroad forever. Didn't have this hanging over me forever. I thought I might as well challenge them. Go to the heart of the monster and stand up and account for yourself. But obviously, I then went onto their home territory and they just took me apart. Basically, I found it very difficult to do anything.
When did you step foot back in the UK?
That was August the 21st, 2000.
Right.
So yeah.
So
Strange enough, with my other hat on, it's actually the beginning of the end times. The end times are 3 periods of 7 years, and they begin on that date. The day after, back in the Holy Land. Yeah.
You okay? You still there?
You have it. I've got a packet up here.
Get my weed sorted out. Mate, obviously. Hello.
Hello?
Hello? You back?
Yes.
Good, you hear me, yeah?
I hear you loud and clear. So we're back in the UK now. It's a new millennium.
Yeah.
Where are you at now? Where did you go now? And what did you get up to?
Lived in again, I've had quite a cool life in some ways. Lived in a flat in NW1 on the Marylebone Road, an Art Deco flat called Dorset House. And I love Art Deco. And we used to have, like, obviously because I was a public profile, we used to have these weekly, what we used to call the symposium, which was, it sounds like it's intellectual, but in Greek it just means drinking party. But that was because the symposium means a talking shop now, because obviously people used to sit around talking when they were drunk. So we were kind of sort of aping the ancient Greeks, basically. We had, like, Lord Gilmore came, he was probably the most high-profile political figure. He'd been in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. We had James Whale, the radio show host, and a lot of fucking minor people as well, but yeah. So yeah, we kind of had this sort of lifestyle I kind of envisaged almost when I was at university, you know, being the Beaumont in the city, having interesting soirees of intellectual conversation and lots of drinking and drug taking, you know. So I say, God has looked after me.
Sorry.
Hello?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. So yeah, so what happened next? I mean, I guess so that a rather big event happened the next year.
What was that? What are you talking about?
2001.
2000, oh yeah, of course, yeah. Then of course, yes.
Where were you? Where were you when that happened?
I was in Camden, and to give you an idea of how fake this is, yeah, my first impression of 9/11, I was walking past a bar, and loads of people just standing around a television set at about 11:30 in the morning. I thought, well, what's going on there? What are they staring at a television set for? So looked in, saw a plane going at the building, and thought, oh, it's a video game. It's some promotion for a video game. That's how real I think those attacks were. That was my first reaction. Yeah, that hear anything, that's a video game. And then walked up the street and heard somebody say, oh, a couple of planes gone into buildings, another one's gone to the Pentagon. And I thought, oh my God. And my first reaction was, doesn't matter who's done this. This gives America every excuse it wants to go and kick hell out of the world, basically. That was my first reaction. Obviously being somebody who was kind of in the front line of human rights and trying, obviously, my own case and so on, just thought, this is going to be a battle against these people now. This is, you know, the biggest battle we're going to ever have. Obviously, I didn't look at 9/11 to start with because I was embroiled in a court case in which they put me on trial. I wasn't allowed to freely cross-examine my witnesses. I wasn't allowed to freely speak in my defence. I wasn't allowed to mention that MI6 had funded Al-Qaeda. So I had a very unfair trial. I had to go to prison again. Went to Belmarsh, this time maximum security prison, in with all the hoodlums. Obviously quite scary, saw people chasing the dragon in my cell, things like that.
So when was it that your court case got? When were you sentenced? Yeah.
Yeah, I was convicted. Strange enough, I was convicted on the 4th of November 2002, and sentenced the next day, so on the 5th of November 2002. But the funny thing was, yes, indeed. Well, remember the 5th of November. That was the day that the Babylonian British state put Jesus Christ in prison, basically.
Did you, during the trial, did you have an inkling of the stakes?
Thinking of what, sorry?
Of the stakes, like what was at stake here? Did you know that this was a possibility, that this was how this was what was gonna happen as a result?
No, well, saying they came down on me. They used 9/11 as an excuse as well, saying, we've got to protect the country now because we've been hit by terrorists and all this kind of thing. So I hadn't been expecting any of that at all. I didn't think they should go to prison for what I'd done in any way. They obviously kept the whole thing up, trying to diss my character all the time, attacking me, trying to make my life living very difficult. But I did have a column with Punch magazine, so I used to use that opportunity to bang them around the head as often as I could. I also, when I was in Paris as well, famously appeared on Have I Got News For You?
Yes, I've seen I've seen it on YouTube.
Yeah, I think they've taken it down now, but yeah, that was how far my fame went, which was again great. I say God Looks After Me. That's my favourite television programme. So it's great to be on my favourite television programme. Mind you, I was beamed in from Paris because obviously I was living beyond the reaches of the British government at the time. Nevertheless, I thoroughly enjoyed being on that programme.
Well, maybe they'll ever have you on again sometime.
They did say that afterwards, but I don't think they would. The last time I saw Have I Got News For You, everybody would look like they were on television.
No one watches TV now anyway.
Yeah, no, I say, well, I don't watch TV. I watch it on iPlayer, don't I?
Dave, by the time this court case came to an end, you must have been bricking it.
Of course I was, yeah. They were trying to kill me. I was suffering from really bad health. They could have given me 6 years in prison. I had a situation where I was once rushed to prison, just a hospital, thinking I was dying of a heart attack. I had rapid heart, I couldn't breathe properly, and I'm thinking they'd given me something. I get to the hospital, I get taken straight in there. I'm on this machine, my resting heart beats 140 beats per minute, and asked the doctor, why is that? He said, don't know, we're doing tests. And I thought, this is it, I'm going to check out. I'm going to die. I'm going to fucking die. But obviously I didn't. And then I came through that and realised it was acid reflux, but then I realised it was caused by a muscle in my neck. Once I corrected that, I was back to good health again.
So you're going into the real deal now.
Yep.
First of all, what about Annie? Annie must have been freaking out at this point?
Obviously freaked out every time I went to prison, obviously, both times I went to prison, yeah.
But this must have been like one step up from what you experienced 10 steps up from what you experienced in France, right?
Yeah, no, it was very hard being in this maximum security prison. And that's obviously a very stressful experience with people who murdered people and things like that. They put me in a cell with somebody who murdered someone in case someone was heading with a hammer. Who was clearly unrepentant. But I say, you'd be surprised to meet nice people in prison, people having opportunities in life but got there for drugs or whatever, So, you try and get on with it the best you can. I made a bit of a thing, getting a bit of tobacco from doing like legal advice to prisoners, that kind of thing. And then I was moved to Ford Open Prison, which is obviously much easier. But I was there, every morning I used to walk out the gates to go and do my job, clearing up the car park outside.
What's it like sharing a cell with someone who's murdered someone?
Well, it's obviously a peculiar experience because you think that they might murder you. Obviously, that's a reasonable belief to have. Someone's murdered someone already, and they've got no repentance that they might be willing to do that again. So you kind of go to sleep thinking, well, this guy might just fucking kill me, because anything in prison could be a weapon. A bog brush the handle could be sharpened, and that can stab you through the chest. You know what I mean? They have to stop using phone cards because to sharpen those up to slash people. So anything that people want to turn into a weapon can be. So you can be very easily killed in prison. And obviously, my other worry was that they wanted me in prison, so the British Army, because I was down to give evidence against the British Army, bloody Sunday inquiry. And I thought, oh my God, they're going to kill me before that happens. So I do think that in Belmarsh I was protected by the RA, the IRA.
How do you stay mentally kind of healthy in a situation like that?
Well, I'd say in my case, I think I was, without realising, I was quite spiritual. I just tried to live in the moment, really, and not show any anger, trying to stay calm, just take it day by day. Yeah, that's all they've done. They've tried to frustrate me as much as possible, rise out of me. Occasionally they've got a small rise out of me, but, they want to say I had a breakdown, but I've never had a breakdown. Just kept trying to keep as calm as possible, basically. But obviously, once I've been to prison, in prison, obviously, to my story, my transition in my story, obviously, is to becoming spiritual. I had my first being filled with the Spirit in prison, as many people do. Prisoner asked me to read him Bible, and at the time he couldn't read, and I literally had like 3 minutes thinking to myself, I was such an atheist, thinking, should I be full of this nonsense? But I did the love and neighbour thing ironically, and thought, well, he takes some solace from this. Who am I to deny that man of solace? He takes solace from it. I can do something decent for him. So I did, and it was a Sermon on the Mount, and I read it, and I had to read it again, and I was filled with the Spirit, because I thought, this is what I've been doing, standing up for love and peace.
Can you remember what that guy had done?
Can I remember what about the guy?
What he had done, why he was there?
He was a pikey, gypsy. So he'd probably been in for all sorts of nicking stuff and God knows what.
Right.
Yeah, most likely. I think he'd been there for nicking. So he might have been there for something violent. I don't know. Can't remember.
What was it? What was the hairiest moment while you were in there? Then would you say?
The hairiest moment when I was down in the workshop. We were filling the bags for other prisoners with coffee and tea and stuff. And this guy came up to me and said, "You used to be in MI5, didn't you?" Like sort of skinhead. It's Northern Irish accent. But I couldn't see the tats on his arms. If I could have seen the tats, I would know which way to respond. Honestly, if he's got God Save the Queen on there, I tell him I put IRA prisoners behind bars. If it says who are up the Rah, I tell him I'm giving evidence against the British Army at the bloody Sunday inquiry. But if I can't see the tats, I can't make that decision. You know what I mean? To get it wrong would be really bad. So I just had to stand there and sort of like face him down, and I managed to sort of edge out of this place and just backed out basically, and I was in public and he couldn't get at me. But that was when this guy intervened for me, and I think that's why I was certainly an Irish Republican intervening on my behalf. Obviously, he came from Glasgow, very close contacts with the Republican movement, the IRA, and so on. So that was part of my protection, and that guy left me alone after that.
How long did you end up staying there then?
In prison, I was there for 7 weeks, and I was let out on a tag. So I was under effective house arrest. At the time, I was living on a place called Osey Island in the Blackwater Estuary, Essex, between Colchester and Chelmsford. And it was a tidal causeway to get on and off. So you can only get on and off 2 periods of 4 hours in the day. And obviously, my tag didn't coincide properly with that. It meant I was stuck on the island, so I was under effective house arrest on an island. Which was quite frustrating, obviously, but it meant I had access to a computer again. I could start lobbying for people to hear my stuff.
It must have been a relief after those 7 weeks, though.
It was a relief, obviously, to get out. I got out of prison the day before my 37th birthday. To give you an idea where we were in time then, I remember next day for my birthday, Annie had bought me my first DVD player. And the first DVD I watched in it was Spider-Man, which the strapline is the one with Tobey Maguire, which is, with great power comes great responsibility.
There you go. So where are we now? This is 2003?
By this time it's 2003, but in this period that they've been bringing me to trial, I've been doing lots of work with Stop the War movement, with Muslim groups and so on. That's why they couldn't give me a long prison sentence. They only gave me 6 months. Took it the time I spent in Paris, obviously, as well. But I basically got around trying to stop the invasion of Iraq, and that was a suspicious thing about the timing of my trial, is it was happening around the time they were making the case to go to Iraq with the September dossier, so I was effectively taken out of action, somebody who could have been a very effective critic against that war. And strange enough, I was cut by Stop the War from the national platform on the day when there was 2 million people in London Iraq War. The greatest show of strength by the British people ever, and they were right.
What was their reasoning for cutting you?
Well, to this day, I don't know. I never got any clear answers, but they usually would put it around that I was still working for MI5 or something, whatever, the usual bollocks, basically.
Yeah.
But I was a very effective public speaker. But I know the reason why it really happened is they know that someone like me would stand there in front of 2 million people and get up and say, we're not going home until we get assurances this isn't going to happen. And that would scare the shit out of them.
The world radically changed from 96 to you getting out again in 2003. It's like a completely different place, isn't it, almost,
Well, yeah, no, it's like, I'll say sometimes I look back on my life and seem to have lived several lifetimes in one, basically. It's quite weird, yes. And obviously, that was one thing, stop the war, and then obviously I continued to lobby government when I came out of prison, trying to get the story heard. Finally, we had the book produced in 2003, but they sat on it when there was all the inquiries into the war and so on. Obviously, a useful time to get that out there, and I'd urge anybody, if they're interested in the Iraq War, to read the analysis in the last chapter of a book called Spies, Lies and Whistleblowers, ostensibly by Annie Mashall, but written by me. And that just takes apart entirely Blair's case for war in Iraq and how he should be tried for war crimes, basically. So like that, and obviously then started to go on the spiritual journey as well. So I had my first experience in prison. I then read the Bible Code, which appears to show that the Torah, the Hebrew version of the Old Testament, first of all books, can somehow predict the future. I tried to disprove that and couldn't. Got into reading about the esoteric, all the stuff to do with Freemasons and symbolism and all that stuff. This, of course, is the time the Da Vinci Code's coming out, so there's lots of interest in all these ancient stories attached to the Bible. So there's all high interest in that, and ironically I spent a couple of years working towards the secret, knowing that no one in the esoteric had figured out the secret, and I was getting there trying to figure out this secret, but by this time the 9/11 Truth Movement came knocking, and they said to me, have you looked at the evidence in 9/11? I said, not closely, no.
Who was it who approached you then?
It was a guy called Noel. I can't remember his bloody surname now, but him and his boyfriend, a guy called Ted, but also this guy called Simon. God, I can't remember his name now.
Aronowitz?
Yeah, that's it, Simon Aronowitz.
Right.
Simon, he was an arch-Zionist. Yeah, Simon Aronowitz, that's right, that's the one, yeah. And traced by him, he was an arch-Zionist. So I do think in some ways what they planned to do was try to keep me in a very normal, contained political movement. But what happened instead was 9/11 took off. Obviously, I looked at the evidence in 9/11 as an ex-intelligence officer and realised there was no evidence of what they were saying. There were no air crash investigation reports. Obviously, I'd looked at those on Lockerbie. There were no forensic reports. There was no backing up, no CCTV. Nothing you'd expect in a counter-terrorist investigation to be picking up to prove that this story had happened. So obviously that made me enormously suspicious. I realised that clearly at some level the American government had to be complicit, that this had been deliberate. And then I went around the country going wherever I could, to back rooms in pubs, sometimes town halls, speaking a word about 9/11. Got very quickly cut from Stop the War platforms as a result of that again. But yeah, took the message out there about 9/11. This was a time of enormous change going on. It was the first internet campaign. The 9/11 Truth Movement was an association of individuals telling the truth. It wasn't an organisation. It's very, very difficult to penetrate and stop. And I got a brilliant education as well. I ran the country talking to people. I used to stay around after talk. I was here at the pub. Try to set up a new 9/11 group, but also get briefings off people who have their specialist areas of knowledge in the banking industry, vaccines, whatever. I got the global warming hoax, all this sort of stuff. I got very early briefings on them, basically.
It's a strange sort of, like, it was really in its infancy, but now it's sort of turned into something quite, like, it's like 9/11 truth and just 9/11 itself has become this sort of pop culture event now, and like it's just something that, you know, people on YouTube comment pages just sort of kind of just bicker about like it's some sort of it was
being
just,
neutralised.
it was such a huge event, and I just couldn't understand how the world could carry on. Almost like it just sort of needed to kind of, something needed to kind of
Come out.
yeah, and it just didn't happen. It just sort of just became this thing that got joked about in cartoons and you know. It didn't take
Yeah,
long
no,
before Oliver Stone made a movie and some other guy made a movie, and it's like that's...
it didn't actually ever touch on the real truth about it, did it? That was the thing. Yeah, obviously that was where we met, wasn't it? When I was at 9/11 Truth.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just laughable to think about that time and where we are now with things. It's just...
Yeah, no, at that time there was great hope. And at that time we really did take the other side apart on all sorts of levels. We really were, because they'd never played the internet game before. They'd never had an internet campaign. They didn't know the form book. So we were taking them apart on all levels. We got the mainstream media. I was famously on Sky News talking about it, even though I'd been invited on to talk about something else. I was on the Heaven and Earth show with Gloria Hunniford, Jeremy Vine show on Radio 2. So we were getting the message out in the big mainstream, you know, well listened to, well watched programs, basically.
You always had quite a knack for steering a conversation to your own sort of agenda. Like,
yeah, no, you've interviewed me many times over the years, and I know that's the case. And I've commented that before, that I do always answer the question, but then I'll take it off somewhere else.
if there's an opportunity for a curveball, you'll go for it, sort of thing. It was quite an art to watch.
It's always seamless as well. It's always, the transition is seamless.
How did you master that skill?
I think it's the way I do it. It's from a stream of consciousness, basically. When I give talks, I don't use any notes at all. And about 3 seconds before I get up, I kind of think, I've got to sort of think about what I'm going to talk about, and I get some vague order in my head, then talk about it. And if I forget where I am or lose my thread, I just sum up, basically. But I do helicoptering, where I can actually think about the next thing I'm going to say when I'm talking about something else, which again is a skill I think I've developed through spiritual programming my brain and heart and so on. But that's essentially how I do it.
And so, yeah, 9/11 Truth happened, and
then obviously I fell out with 9/11 Truth, at the same time stopped going out with Annie as well, after 13 years.
Yeah, that must have been a huge drag.
It was, yeah, no, you were there. You were there famously, weren't you, the moment it happened? And when I went, we were recording the bloody novel, remember?
Yeah.
You and Ollie. And I went next door and I laid down this ultimatum to her and she didn't respond. So I remember coming back and saying, well, that's it, I'm no longer going out with Annie. And you just both looked at me like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah, you were there.
Well, I you know, you guys were quite a unique part of our experience, and
yeah, no, I know that we were the kind of, obviously the golden couple of 9/11, the best in the world. People love personalities, and we were the golden couple. Basically, they once joked and called us the posh and becks of the truth movement.
Do you miss her?
Not really, no. I've gone through some stuff recently, sort of spiritually, and that's sort of led me to a new understanding of her and my relationship with her, and I've always known that God brought the white woman to me at the time. I mean, look at her, for God's sake. She was beautiful, blonde, titsy, sexy, also very intelligent, very robust, very, quite a very strong woman, strong-willed. The kind of woman I like, obviously, and, it's like God brought me the perfect woman. But we didn't evolve together. I mean, essentially, I became truly spiritual. She didn't, and I think really when you're spiritual, you can't go out with someone who's non-spiritual. It's just you're not seeing the world in the same way. Yeah. So that was the first thing I kind of essentially gave up for God. Really, was Annie.
You gave Annie up for God.
Essentially, yes.
So, I mean, you tell us about your awakening.
Yeah, so obviously, I leave the 9/11 truth movement. They tried to disown me at one point because I'm talking about no planes and Zionism and things like that. Face them down. We get a documentary called 9/11, the British Broadcasting Conspiracy. But during this period, increasingly strange things have been happening to me. My spiritual journey has started to become very curious. I've started to get, one of the weirdest things is I took in Annie's brother who had problems with drink and drugs. I'd become spiritual. It was a spiritual Christian thing to do, kind of thing. And one day he comes up to me and tells me he's the Archangel Gabriel. And I tell him to come barking around. Basically, another day he comes up to me and asks me if I know who Yeshua is. I tell him it's a Jewish name for Jesus because I've been researching the esoteric and all religious stuff. He says, no, it's not. I said, it is. It's a Jewish name for Jesus. He said, no, it's not. He said, I've got to tell you, you are Yeshua. You are Yeshua. I said, what the fucking hell is he getting on about? So I told him to shut up. But I later found out that the Archangel Gabriel calls the Messiah to duty, so he was doing his job, and Yeshua is indeed not Jesus. Jesus is God above. Yeshua is the name of Christ. The translation Jesus Christ is a very bad one from Yeshua Messiah. It should be a Shayler Christ, but that would rather give it away. But yeah, so that had happened. There have been other weird things like that. A woman coming up to me after an ayahuasca session, me and my mate, saying I was told by a clairvoyant that at my next ayahuasca session I would meet the one. And obviously in those days you kind of think like your partner for life. So my mate's like chatting this woman up thinking this is something that's going to happen. It didn't happen. Then my mate, in fact it was Ollie. Ollie said to me, he said, it could have been you. This is Owen's brother, for people who don't know this. Yeah, he said, it could have been you, Dave. And I said, no, I didn't go for it. I said, but it's pretty funny because the chosen one that normally is the one is the chosen one of God, not your partner for life. It's only in modern culture your partner for life. At least what are you saying? I said, I'm not saying anything. I just think it's really funny that happened. So, I have these really weird prophetic things happening. People coming to me like this and getting all these messages from God that in a previous lifetime I was crucified, being told something to do with the Jesus lifetime, starting to put together reincarnating past lives. Some of the great people from history realising they incarnate from the same soul. All sorts of weird shit happening. Being told that I was one of the two witnesses in the book of Revelation. And again, this is all accompanied by signs, which if you haven't been through a spiritual journey always sound mad to people, but if you know anything spiritual, you'll know what signs are. And then God told me I was invincible. The other side couldn't actually kill me. I asked for a sign, and about 15 minutes later, there's a kid dressed as Captain Scarlet, the indestructible man, standing next to me, which was my favourite television program when I was about 4, basically, but therefore the symbol that I am invincible against them. So all this weird shit like that was happening. Eventually it comes to a point where I'm watching, in fact, a mate doing a talk about the Da Vinci Code, but I realise that all the things he's talking about in there he thinks are evil symbols are in fact a good meaning if you know what I know. And there's a moment where Langdon says in that, it's what you believe, to Sophie, and I suddenly believed that I had to try and believe that what I was obviously being told by somebody, some spirit out there, that I was somehow the chosen one of God. And I went with that, and I got taken to documents which my name was in. I then had what I call my Nessun Dorma night, when God told me I was going to be up all night. I was attacked by evil spirits, physically attacking me, trying to push me over, trying to punch me, trying to enter my body. Obviously, I have to stay calm and in love with it, the whole situation. One point, remembered a painting I'd done when I was 18 with a chessboard in perspective on it. Then clearing darkness from London, doing all sorts of things that night. Went out to see my mate who was being John the Baptist to my Jesus Christ, and saw him, and he told me a bomb hadn't got in London. So it was like, I've got to fucking stop it, clear the darkness out of London last night. And then came out and the bomb hadn't gone off, and then he showed me a crop circle that appeared, and I had a chessboard in perspective like the one I remembered. And in that moment, I said, that's my sign. It's me. I'm the Messiah. I've known this all my life, but I've only just realised it. And I also saw superimposed upon that crop circle, The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, which is something I painted in a past life for that moment. I'm the man looking from the perspective of the empty chair at the Last Supper, basically. So it's all foretold in paintings across the esoteric, everything else. And then the heavens opened, basically.
Blimey.
Yeah, I was bathed in spiritual life. I went through the process of a kind of crucifixion. You finish up making the shape of the cross, but you're obviously not being nailed to one. It's a spiritual process. And I knew at the time I was getting a lot downloaded, a lot essentially passing over me. God was passing over. Obviously, the Last Supper is a Passover supper. And it was just extraordinary. I knew what was going in. I was humbled by it, and like it was like I was drowning in divine light. It was just truly, truly extraordinary. And after that, I literally fished up face down on the floor before God. I really did. Got up, and then me and the Baptist went to see the crop circle. Baptist, by the way, is Adrian Connick. I made the 9/11, the British Broadcasting Conspiracy documentary with. And we went to the crop circle, and I had a sublime moment in the crop circle. It was just truly amazing. I thought I had all sorts of signs about past lives, all sorts of stuff. The crop circle was near Silbury here. It's in a place called West Kennet. Kennet is a transliteration of the Hebrew word for sacred knowledge. The signs were written large, and in the crop circle it was true, even then I saw a plane flying over with a red cross on the side, the symbol of the Messiah. Just all the time.
So you're constantly being given signs, basically.
Yeah,
affirming signs.
Affirming signs, yeah, that I am Christ. I've got this right, and that's been going on obviously for years now. But that was where it got to a height at one point where it was just obvious.
But I mean, what would you say to those people who go, he's gone bonkers, and that they've got to him because he's MI5 of what I'll make him look like a lunatic, so he can discredit the 9/11 truth and all this sort of type thing.
No, I know obviously people say that I've gone mad or they're playing with my mind or whatever. I say I've probably destroyed my credibility with everybody but the one who matters, which is God, the one true God, Jesus. And that's the important one, so I'm sticking to it. But yeah, no, I've seen things over the years. I've just been through a second awakening recently and seen it. I know the date of the end times, the 22nd of August 2021. And anybody who talks to me knows that I talk about these things rationally. I base my claim, on documents. I base my claim on documents held by the sages for at least 2,000 years. We have these documents saying that in these texts, like the Rod of Aaron, the initial letters of the 12 tribes of Israel and so on, you will find the ineffable name of God or the name of the Messiah. And my name is in those documents. Now, they predate my existence by 2,000 years. How is that happening? And in fact, they don't actually predate my existence by 2,000 years. If you truly understand the spiritual, you know that the Torah, the original Hebrew text of the Bible, is not even a book. It's more like a computer programming code for creation. So it's more
can I just ask you about something? Sorry, so the date of the end times, you said 27th of August. 22nd of August 2021.
That's what, yeah.
So my son will be turning 6 on the 12th of August.
All right, well, there you go then.
So is it, when you say the end times, you mean like the world, is he going to have a world that he can live in past the age of 6, or what's going to happen? What do you mean that the end of the world is going to be?
Well, it appears that the sun is dying and going to be replaced by another sun. The Native Americans hold the idea we're going into the 6th sun, and I say we're going into the 7th age. And that's because there's no sun in the first age, so we're both on the same page. It's not just me saying this. We've got all sorts of native people who've handed wisdom down orally for many, many thousands of years, saying saying the same thing. We're about to go into this new age in which the sun will die and be replaced by a new one.
So
A new heaven and new earth.
as a result of that, then I'm not going to get to experience being like an old man in this body, like. And
Well, we're going to transition essentially into beings of light. It's when, for want of a better term, it's the final judgment, D-Day. It's prophesied by many cultures, and each human being will be judged according to what they've said and done under God's law, basically.
so
And that law is love. So that, by the way, is the law of love. It's not being judged under their rules or some sort of judgmental committee or something. It's very much judged upon your heart and how much you've loved.
So as the current incarnate of Jesus Christ, what is your duty now? What's your duty left?
Well, essentially, to get this message about love being the law out there, I've produced a book, websites, bookofthelaw.org. There's a book called Law, the Truth About Its Source, Principles and Primacy, and how it can be used to save the world. That's all there. I've left my legacy. I've been told by God that I'm going to shortly ascend, as the Bible suggests. In line with the prophecy, I found Mary Magdalene. She was the first to see the risen Jesus. She does know I've been for a second awakening at the very least, even though she doesn't think I'm Christ, but nevertheless that may be enough. And yes, I've been told I'm about to ascend, go through a physical bodily ascension, which is obviously very hard thing to understand, isn't it? Obviously. I had been told it was going to happen before. I was given a date. It didn't happen, but that was the start of the process. Since then, I've been clearing out through this process. And, so the date's not far away at all, really. And obviously, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen, but it could be the final part of my process, because it appears that I have no role left here. Nobody here really wants to hear the message or do anything that might actually change the world, basically. So I have to...
I still want to hear your message.
Oh, good. But yeah, it's totally different. Now, obviously, what's happening as well is 144,000 have been called. Obviously, you're one of them. But I think, to say, I've kind of done my work here. That's very much my feeling, that there's nothing else we can do. And I'm just going to piss people off if I stay around any longer. And that, therefore, I will ascend. But in my ascension process, there will come the realization that I am Christ. It will be accompanied by some kind of flash of light in the heavens, followed shortly after by some great noise, basically, particularly the Bible.
You're quite sure of this?
Well, I'm sure I'm going to ascend. Whether the date I've been given is the right one, I'm less sure of, should we say. I'm trying to have faith in God that it is the right one. But that is obviously a scary proposition, going through the final process.
I was going to say, do you get scared?
No, not. Obviously, I don't as a spiritual being, but something so unknown as this, obviously, I've got to just basically stay in the moment. I can't contemplate how you go through a bodily ascension, you know what I mean? It's just like, well, man, he's been beamed up like a fucking ray of light or what, you know? It's like, but the miraculous happens, you know, God can interfere in the matrix, so it's all entirely possible if you believe, and you believe in miracles and things, but it's obviously a big test, but I am making provision for it not happening as well. I'm trying to get myself sorted out where I live and stuff like that, so, yeah.
Yeah, like, what is the average day like for the Messiah now?
Now, I live in a cattle shed, would you believe? Where I was born.
Do you sleep in a manger?
I don't. I sleep on a futon.
Nice.
And basically, you know, get up, have a bit of coffee for breakfast, smoke a few fags, have a joint. It's obviously a very interesting place to live. We have many discussions around the fire at breakfast, things like that, you know, and I'm always heartened that we continue to discuss these stories in the Bible and things like that, amongst many other things as well, of course, but that people are still talking about it. This book exercises an incredible voodoo almost over the human psyche, that we can't get rid of it. And I say, even in the most recent series of South Park, they had the Jesus Christ figure in it, this time snorting coke. But nevertheless, the prophecy is alive and well in all sorts of places.
Do people around you now, like, do they kind of accept you know?
No, not at all. Not at all, no.
No one.
Not at all. This is what I found slightly depressing. And obviously, Mary Magdalene didn't want to come on the journey. They didn't want to come on the journey. I went to see friends down the south coast. They didn't want to acknowledge me in any way. People say the same things to me. Just go and sign on. Make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm coming. Okay. Well, I've kind of run out of time, but
right, okay, no problem. I think we're about there.
I think we've come full circle. But yeah, do you want to give like a closing message then?
Yeah. So I am here as Jesus Christ on this amazing day, foretold by many different cultures over many millennia, is going to happen on the 22nd of August 2021. So it's time to prepare for that. The way you prepare for that is by living under the love your neighbour principle and accepting that there is a higher law than anything mankind can produce. So getting yourself out of all corporatism, out of all duties to government and so on, and be judged on your duty of care to your fellow man. And also, I therefore ask people to respect God's chosen one and acknowledge that I am Jesus Christ. And that way you'll find a high place in the new world. Because the new world, although we all go there, will have different levels. And obviously there'll be a level for those who choose not to in any way repent and should reject the love your neighbour principle. Dangerous people, and they will therefore have an eternity to wonder why they rejected the love your neighbour principle and made such a stupid decision. But for the rest of people, there'll be different levels according to how good you've been. But we'll obviously have the gods at the top and 144,000 above and 144,000 from earth. That's the message. That's what people have got to prepare for. Don't care, no excuses, nothing else. Just prepare yourselves for that. That's all that's going on. It's the most important thing. It's the biggest change the universe has seen since God said, "Let there be light," and this world of incarnation was formed. It's that big a change.
David, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Cheers, mate. It's been great. It's been great to chat a bit that whole time, really.
Take care, Dave.
Right.
Hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Stay in touch, yeah?
Be well.
Cheers, man. Bye now.
Bye-bye.